Gang, we have a lot to talk about. Not all of it is positive. I wanted to start with all-star reserves because I thought that would be fun. I would even start with the Knicks. Ashley was busting my chops on our text chain about how I think the Knicks are fun. But I lost out to you two because you guys want to talk about the storm cloud that is Joel Embiid's knee. So that's where we're going to begin.
I don't think I voted for that. Don't think I voted for that.
Somebody, Aaron voted.
I voted for it.
It was Aaron and Bill.
I think Embiid maybe missing the season's kind of significant. Yeah, and your sadness is kind of funny's the wrong word, but like poignant, emotional.
I'm glad that I think schadenfreude is the word that you're looking for. But sure. I'm glad that I could provide that service for you. All right. So Joel Embiid injured meniscus in his left knee. Bill, what are you hearing? It looks like they could go any number of different ways on this, but they're going to wait a couple days, maybe even a week through the All-Star break to figure out what the next step is.
It has been a confusing process trying to get information. Normally, when these things happen, you either get silence from folks. That happens, especially when they're frustrated, or you get pretty clear answers. Yesterday, there was messaging coming out of the Sixers that it was a torn meniscus. That obviously is highly problematic if that were the case. And then Woj tweeted that it was actually an injury. And I don't know if you guys noticed, he kept using the term injury, not tear. And so I think Shams, me, a bunch of folks were clearly following up. And what came back was some bizarro, it's an injury and we definitely think it's a problem. We're going to know more later. So there's a lot of that I don't know. And I think we don't know. Is it torn is a question. How serious is the injury in terms of what they're expecting? And to what degree, and this is speculation, is some of this confusion about trying to convince Joel Embiid to play when maybe he shouldn't, or him trying to convince them to play when maybe he shouldn't. So I think there's a lot of decisions and consternation going on behind the scenes with the Sixers. And my guess is over the next few days and the next week, there will be conversations about what's actually happening. And there will be real conversations internally and externally about what should happen in terms of when he would return, how hard he should push himself, what are the surgery options. And like, jokes aside, John, I am heartbroken for you. And I do owe you an apology. I really am. Because
actually, if you want to apologize to me too, both of you.
What am I apologizing for?
No, because you guys said that I should believe in this team, and I said, something always comes up.
You know what, John? Some may say your lack of belief might have caused this to happen. If you manifested positive energy, John, perhaps we would not be having this conversation. So maybe your negativity went ahead and trickled down to the team. So maybe you should be doing some self-reflecting. I'm just saying.
This is new breaking news. Sources close to the show tell me John actually caused Embiid's injury. And but no, seriously, dude, like, I am sorry, because obviously you guys go from a contender to a giant question mark.
I'm trying not to laugh during a serious conversation about me being responsible for this, but it's not surprising, right? I mean, like, look at his injury history. Like, I'm not going to rattle them all off, but like, starting from his rookie year that he missed because of his right foot injury, and he had a torn meniscus already and sore this and broken that. And like, the guy, bless him, he's such an incredible talent, but he has been super injury prone. And this is the latest one.
No,
I kind of feel like I'm not surprised too much by the secrecy coming from the 76ers organization. There are some organizations that are not as transparent with injuries as others. I think of the Brooklyn Nets for one. They're very secretive about what goes on behind closed doors. They don't really divulge a lot of information. It's a lot of buzzwords and things like that. I'm not surprised that this is happening with the 76ers. I feel like when it comes to Joel Embiid, I feel like this is very much on brand for them. Anytime he sustained an injury, I can't remember them being very transparent about it. It's always like it's not as bad as it was reported, or we're still getting different opinions, or he still has to go ahead and get an MRI or a CAT scan, whatever it is. Like, they've never really been very open and honest about what's going on. So in that regard, they're on brand. But John, to your point, yes, I mean, this is a guy who sustains a lot of injuries, whether big or small, throughout his career, sometimes at the worst possible moment. So you wonder if the 76ers are there's a fire in the house and they're just trying to figure out how to put it out before they let everybody else know the house is burning down.
Already burned a while ago.
Hope doesn't exist. I surrendered.
It burned a while ago. I just want to read something to you guys here. So LeBron weighed in on this.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
he tweeted this out right before we started the show, and I immediately was like,
people,
"Oh,
John.
cannot wait to read this to Ashley and Bill and our producer Aaron."
Don't put Ashley in here. Ashley does
Hold
not.
on.
Hurt people, John.
Here we go. He said, "Where are all the media outlets, TV media personalities, hot takes that talk so much? I'm going to use the word trash about Joel Embiid missing those games when he knew what he was dealing with." I'm old enough to remember last week on this show when you two and our producer Aaron, or at least in our text messages, was giving Embiid heat for ducking Joker in Denver. You guys were like, "Oh,
historically."
First of all, it wasn't last week. It was a couple days ago. Second of all,
time flies. Apologize to me, to
Second
Embiid.
Of all, and like, I'll let Bill take it from here, but like, in fairness, I did say give him a break this time because he was hurt, but it's a very strange coincidence going back to 2019 that he's never played in Denver. I will give him a pass this time around. But come on, it's a little odd. 2019, that's a very strong coincidence. That's all I got on it. That's all I have.
We're never too old for career advice. I'm going to give John some, even though he doesn't need it. But having covered LeBron, if you are on LeBron's side when he is trying to be the steward and the sage of self-awareness, run for cover. And I don't need LeBron James lecturing me or anybody else or Ashley about self-awareness. No, I mean, come on.
Doesn't mean he's wrong.
Give me a break.
No, is that a shot fired, Bill?
And I'll say, I like LeBron, but that's true. And I'll say this too, just like I don't think, John, you're responsible for Embiid's injuries. I don't think Embiid deciding to play against Denver 2 years ago would have somehow made him get injured in this particular moment this week. So the idea that him ducking Joker, which he's done, he won't play Joker in Denver. Like, that's a real thing. The idea that like we should walk back in a pop. I mean, no, bro. Like, two things mutual at once. He avoided Jokic.
I think he was, but I think he was referring to the conversation. But I think he was referring to the conversations about like this moment in time, not like throughout the trajectory, but like
you and I seeded this game. All right, maybe this game he's hurt, but that doesn't mean he was hurt the other game. But you're right. Like, I was highly skeptical he was injured. In general, I thought he was load managing, and I don't really have an issue with it because this is what guys do. I do feel bad that when he hobbled out there before the injury against the Warriors, I was like, oh.
But there is a conversation to have here, and I think that this is what LeBron was getting at, that there was this like external pressure, some of it linked to the 65 game threshold that we've talked about a lot, right? Where like, hey, if you don't get to 65, you're not going to be eligible for awards. And then the conversation that we've had where, Ashley and Bill will go, oh, it's coincidental he hasn't played in Denver. And it is coincidental, but there was this swell of whispering, poking, prodding at Embiid for why isn't he out there? It's a big game. It's a national TV game. He's ducking Joker. Then he doesn't play in Portland. Then he has another big game against Golden State that he clearly should not have played in, that he plays 30 minutes in, and that leads to this latest injury. So that's what I think LeBron was getting at, and I think it's completely valid.
And just a little bit of pushback to that, though. I agree. It's completely valid in this instance, but you have to kind of look at it also like that, that tale of the boy who cried wolf, right? Every time he cried wolf, there wasn't a wolf there. And the one time
there's been so many wolves.
But what I'm saying is when it comes to the Jokic Embiid situation, there's been a lot of times that there hasn't really been something he couldn't play through or even anything wrong, and he just doesn't play. So in the instance where this time he's obviously very much hurt, you saw it in the Warriors game, he couldn't even take a deep breath. He was laboring 5 minutes into the first quarter. Obviously something's very wrong, but you also have to understand the level of, skepticism when it comes to him not playing against Jokic once again in Denver, when that has been the pattern since 2019. I just think that there's two sides to the conversation. That's all. All
right. I'm going to try to be nicer because there is a Sixers jersey for those of you that are listening behind John, and there's a Sixers logo in his heart. And I do want to be sensitive. I do want to be sensitive to that. I just mean like this is personal for you, and I get it. However, if Joel Embiid was really bullied onto a late night game, the TNT game, because people like Ash and I and other folks were questioning his toughness, he needs to get mentally tougher. And that organization needs to be better run because, look, there's going to be criticism. The higher you go, the brighter your star, ask LeBron James, the more people are going to criticize you. You don't have to like it. You can do what you want to do. But if he's hurt and he's out there, I mean, the idea that we put him on the floor, give me a break. I mean, let's talk about Nick Nurse pretending this was some sort of different injury. And let's talk about the Sixers feeling Ash, congrats to your Knicks, maybe more pressure than they should be in January or February, and trying to win games that maybe aren't significant when you weigh it against the risk of Embiid being out there.
There's some blame to be laid at Nick Nurse's feet for this, no doubt about it. I just think, like, Ashley, when you're talking about the boy who cried wolf, this dude's injury history is longer than a CVS receipt. It's like the Dead Sea Scrolls. It just goes on and on and on. So like if the Wolves are his injury and he's had a zillion of them. So like when I see them hold him out, I'm like, yeah, good. I mean, like, the guy falls to the floor like Humpty Dumpty every time he goes to the basket. It's brutal. So, you know, I'm with Bill on this one point, which is like, what is Nick Nurse and the medical staff doing? Like, why are they letting him
protect your guy?
And actually, you're talking about him not even being able to breathe, let alone like being able to load up and try to dunk. Like, what are you doing when you see him try to load up and dunk and he falls to the floor and then you still keep him out there for 30 minutes? That's madness.
Yeah. By the way, on the boy who cried wolf, maybe it's a boy who cries wolf, but when sometimes also getting mauled by wolves. Like, it can be, it's kind of because he does cry. He's the boy who cries wolf, but then sometimes he's just getting mauled in the forest. So it's hard to know with Embiid, right? It's hard to know, which is why, to your point, the medical staff and the coaching staff got to protect him from himself.
They have a big decision here.
This is true. And we spoke about this with Avery. Like, sometimes you have to protect a player from themselves, because a competitor is going to want to compete regardless of whether or not he's in a position to compete. And I think that's where the 76ers organization failed Joel Embiid. If they knew what was going on with him, which I'm sure that they did, unless it just sprung on them, which would be a totally different conversation, they should have stopped him from playing that Warriors game, nationally televised or not. It should not have happened. So there's blame to go around, not just looking at Joel Embiid and, you know, maybe pushing himself more than he should have. That's what an athlete's going to do. The 76ers should have stopped him from stepping foot on that court.
And now it's those same people that are in charge of deciding what happens next, right? Because this is a big, big decision. I mean, there's basically 3 paths that they can go here. There's the rest, see how you're doing, and then try to get back out there and play on it situation. There's 2 different surgeries. One, I'm going to butcher how you pronounce this, but it's a meniscectomy, like a meniscusectomy. So you could potentially come back from that in like a month or 2. And then there's the full repair, which means it's a shutdown for the rest of the season. So, and like, I don't know what treatment plan they'll end up on. None of us are doctors, but you know, if they try to do the rest and play through a thing, that gives me like super pause. Bill, have you heard anything about this?
Yeah, I just have a quick thought and I want to hear what you guys think, because, and I don't want to overstate this. I'm not saying that Embiid's going to leave the Sixers, but entering this year, changing coaches, moving on to Nurse, when Harden was doing his dramatic, like, I'm gone now thing, there were absolute concerns and pressures in that organization. Daryl Morey runs basketball ops all the way down, that they had better figure it out and it better work, because they worry about Embiid going somewhere else. They worry about Embiid being a Knick. They worry about this sort of pattern around the NBA of guys getting frustrated and just one-day contract or no contract saying, the hell with it, I want to go somewhere else. So I think it's an interesting point of context to what you said, John, is not that the Sixers would operate against Embiid's best sort of interest long-term consciously, but they have diverging goals potentially, because the Sixers aren't just like, good now. It's, hey, if we're worried he's going to leave, or if we don't do well because he's sidelined and he leaves, maybe that pressures. So I also wonder if there's going to be, Embiid's going to have to look out for himself here, because this is a Sixers organization that is feeling a lot of heat to be successful for their own jobs. And I think they believe potentially their ability to keep Embiid long-term.
Well, I mean, diving into that a little bit, just playing devil's advocate in this situation. Yes, I agree with everything that you're saying, but also let's look at that from an aspect of an organization elsewhere. Like, you see how frequently Joel Embiid gets injured. You see how it happens at sometimes the worst possible moment in the season. Are you even a team that maybe a few years ago would have traded the house for a player like Joel Embiid, or Joel Embiid specifically in this situation? Are you now looking at it through, you know, the rose-colored glasses off and seeing it for actually what it is, that he's a really, really great player when he's available, but that availability is starting to dwindle. And what do they say in the NBA? Your best asset is your availability. And Joel Embiid has taken a hit season after season. So while, yes, he's an asset, Are you as interested as you once were once upon a time? I don't know at this point.
I think
That's where I would be on the line a little bit.
It's really smart. It's a good concern. It only takes one There are GMs who would go get him. I mean, we'll have to see what happens here, right? But I think there's still so much value. But is he going to a contender? It's the same reason Philly got him.
Would a contender go after him, though?
I mean, I think it's more. It's interesting, right? The Knicks would have a year ago. I don't think that's as necessary now.
This is my point.
But like if he's not going to Cleveland. But if you're he's not going to Oklahoma City. But there are teams I think that are on the verge a little bit. And by the way, this is how Embiid became a Sixer. He fell to 3 in that draft coming out of Kansas when he was clearly a generational talent because his injury issues went all the way back to college and there were concerns. So someone I think would just say it's worth the risk.
Yeah, I think more in the immediate term, it's less about are they going to move Embiid than what are they going to do without Embiid, right? Because look, they lost 4 straight before they beat Utah. They needed all 51 of Maxi's points last night to win that game. They're a completely different team with and without Joel Embiid. They're 26-8 with him. They're 4-9 without him. My question for you guys is what would you, let's just say they're not going to have Embiid for a while, potentially for the rest of the season. What do you do at the deadline? Are you trying to keep the team afloat in case he comes back? Or are you just going to sit on your assets? They have projected to have $55 million in cap space during the offseason. They could have as many as 3 picks to move in during the offseason they have 3 picks to move now. They could potentially add and try to stay afloat, but I don't even know if that's a good idea because they're tumbling down the standings.
I should know this. Didn't Daryl Morey just get an extension? Am I making that up? Or is that it?
He did.
So yes. So I think I thought he would have been under more pressure, Ashley. But I think if Daryl has time, people don't operate in the best interest of their teams. They operate in the best interest of their careers. That's just, and you hope those things converge. The fact that the guy that makes decisions is here for a while, I think means they can be more conservative if they choose. There's not as much pressure.
You were just saying though, you gotta
there's still
fuck up the team because Embiid might want to leave.
No, there's still what I said is you might want Embiid to get out there because if it doesn't work and he breaks and you think he's going somewhere else anyway, it doesn't matter. I think you can win with this team enough to keep your head above water if he's going to be out 3 months or 2 months. And I think the idea of going all in if you don't know what Embiid's going to be is a question mark. You're right.
But do you even, as the 76ers, do you even want to keep your head above water in this situation? If you're not going to have Joel Embiid, but what I'm saying is if you're not going to have Joel Embiid, right? Let's be honest here. As good as the 76ers are from this time last year, and we've had this conversation on the show, I think that they're better without James Harden. They're better under Nick Nurse. We've seen that. Tobias Harris looks great. Tyrese Maxey looks great. Shout out to him making his first All-Star. So they look better. But let's not put the carriage before or the horse before the carriage before the horse, whatever the saying is. You still need Joel Embiid if you're going to go ahead and go the distance. So keeping your head above water is great, but the end result's going to be the same. It's going to be a lot of nothing if you don't have Joel Embiid on the floor.
It's not like LeBron James is available, right? So to replace a Joel Embiid for whatever that price is, and the market is asking a lot for even guys you can't. So you
can't replace him. But it's not about replacing Embiid. You can't. That's impossible. There's not another one out there. He's one of one. It would be okay, prior to the injury, people were talking about, do they go get Bojan Bogdanovic or do they try to get Bruce Brown or, I don't know. In this instance, do you go get a Kelly Olynyk? I'm not a huge Kelly Olynyk guy, but he's somebody who's getting interest on the trade market and could be maybe a stopgap measure. I don't know. I hate even mentioning this. It sounds absurd.
I wouldn't. Because it's not a big differential maker. To your point, he's one of one. If he plays at some point between now and the NBA Finals, Philly's got a shot. And if he doesn't, they don't, regardless of what move they make.
So you're keeping your head above water just in this scenario that Joel Embiid comes back.
Yeah, look, all right.
But is he back in 6 weeks? Don't you think that within the organization, we may not know, but that locker room, that organization knows whether or not that's even a possibility, and they'll know that within the next week or so. Let's play worst case scenario. Worst case scenario, that Joel Embiid is not coming back this season. It is a far-fetched just dream that's even a possibility. You keeping your head above water for what exactly? Wouldn't it be better to just kind of let the season play out the way that it plays out. How many games you win, how many games you lose doesn't really matter, and go for the lottery. Like, why would you even? Why would you even attempt? Why would you even attempt that?
Yeah, I don't think that they're going to be able to sink that far, Ash, because like when you're looking at it right now, I mean, I'm with you because, you know, I had mentioned the Knicks and the Cavs had passed them, and we're going to talk Knicks in a little bit, but they're still 4 games up on the Pacers, right? I mean, like, even if they went into full tank mode, which I seriously doubt they're going to do, I don't think they're going to drop out of the playoffs. So when you're saying like,
probably,
yeah, I don't even think they'll drop that far. But then the question is, if they can get Embiid back, what happens? Like, then you just go, well, all right, we're not going to have home court in any of these series. Hopefully we catch fire, kind of like the Heat did last year, but you're going to have an Embiid who's coming off an injury in the best case scenario, like recovering over however much time, might have just had surgery. I think the year's already cooked. I know that you guys think that I'm, you know, Johnny negative over here, and like I hate the Sixers, but I've seen it. I just think they're cooked.
Yeah. I mean, I think that if this situation happened November, we'd be having a different conversation.
Yeah.
But we're approaching the All-Star break. Everyone knows that's when basketball really starts getting competitive. It's the stretch. It's when the seeding starts really formulating itself, and you figure out who's a contender, who's a pretender. It's just horrible timing for the 76ers. If this, like I said, if this was 3 months earlier, I feel like we're having a different conversation. But February, this happening, it's a little tricky. It's a little sticky.
I don't know if you guys are into this, but I'm going to go light some Palo Santo and some sage. And
I actually did that this morning.
Yeah, I'm going to sage the hell out of the house and that Sixers jersey behind me